Chicago Bears may have reached their first uh-oh moment of the preseason. I am Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune. That's Dionne Miller of ABC 7. A beautiful day at Soldier Field on Tuesday for Family Fest, except for one small thing. A lot of injuries, a lot of COVID-related absences. Dionne, trying to wrap her head around it. What's your thoughts?
Well, it's not good. The thoughts are not good. I'm stunned because on Monday, Matt Nagy could not have dismissed the question about the Dolphins' COVID issues, who they will have joint practices with next week. Couldn't have dismissed that question as if there was a concern there more quickly than he did, right?
Yeah.
That came out of the reporter's mouth. Is that a concern? I mean, no, not at all. On to the next, right? The very next day, they place 4 on the COVID reserve list. 4. And we get no explanation. And those are guys, I'm sorry, those guys were not testing positive when Matt Nagy was pre-practice talking to the media. That also bothers me, is that they could have told us this in advance, and now here they are. Not only that, all the injuries. You're right. Like we're 7 days into training camp, and the headline for the Bears is injuries.
Yeah, so you can almost play a spin the wheel game here, and I'll give you my list here of uh-oh, concerns or not concerned.
Yeah.
On offense, guys who are not practicing right now include Tarik, Cohen, Germain, Ifedi, Teven Jenkins, Elijah Wilkinson. On defense, Eddie Jackson, Eddie Goldman, Tayshaun Gibson. On special teams, Pat Scales. So all of a sudden you start to see this list add up. Varying degrees of concern on all of those guys that I mentioned, but it's a reminder that there's a lot to navigate through to get to September 12th in a state where you feel like you've got your whole team. Let's start with the COVID issue, because Eddie Goldman's place on that list was the one that happened first, and it was the one that brings the most concern to you as you go forward, looking at both Eddie as a person and the Bears as a defense having to deal without him. I've been told that Eddie tested positive for COVID-19, but has been asymptomatic. So now that brings up the question, is Eddie Goldman vaccinated? Because all those people out there in the outside world who say, it doesn't matter, it's none of your business. Well, it is our business, because here's the deal. If Eddie Goldman is unvaccinated, he has to miss a minimum of 10 days after that positive test. That's 2 weeks of practice time for a guy who didn't play all of last year, needs to get into football shape, needs to get ready for the regular season. We're going to find out very soon. We have to follow up with Matt Nagy on Thursday to find out, okay, what's the timeline on Eddie's return? Is he vaccinated? He may not answer those questions directly. It also raises the questions of the other 3 guys placed on that list, which include Patrick Scales, Elijah Wilkinson, and Christian Jones. Are those guys on that list because they tested positive, or are they on that list because they're unvaccinated and have been identified as high-risk close contacts?
Right.
As you know, the NFL has different protocols this year for guys who are vaccinated versus unvaccinated. The Vikings have been dealing with it up north, and now all of a sudden it comes knocking on the door here at Hallis Hall, and you say, oh boy, this is something that Matt Nagy has to get his arms around right away.
And it's disappointing and sad for Eddie Goldman because of why he sat out all of that last year. Even mandatory minicamp was because of COVID concerns. Like, that's what he was worried about. And for his name to be the first one on that list was really startling and sad. And yet also you get to the football part. They were so excited to get him back in the trenches on defense. So excited about it. And now even 10 more days away from the game, there is concern there that he will even be regular season ready, no matter if he's asymptomatic or not. I mean, I guess that's a good thing, but at the same time, losing those valuable reps for a guy who hasn't had any in a year and a half, that's a big deal.
No question, and it's conditioning that you lose out on. And then you look at a guy like Elijah Wilkinson. We'll see how quickly he's able to return to practice. When we spoke with him in his introductory interview at training camp a week ago, he was wearing a mask. Typically these days, that's a symbol that you're unvaccinated. So now all of a sudden you've got to go through a different set of hurdles to get back on the practice field. That left the Bears, Dionne, at Family Fest running their offense without their projected starter at left tackle, their projected starter at right tackle, and their projected swing tackle. Ifedi, Jenkins, and Wilkinson all missing from that practice. And it raises big questions about the biggest question that the Bears have for this team, which is offensive line stability, as Matt referenced on Tuesday. I'm losing track of my days here.
No, same. And no, you are exactly right. And how many times have you personally asked Matt, like, what was it about last year where you saw some uptick in the offense? And he said consistency on the O-line. They're gonna start the season without that. We've got no timeline on Ifedi. He can't pinpoint when Jenkins is going to start practicing. He hasn't even practiced.
Right.
This is a guy that I think can be nasty. We haven't seen it. And he needs those reps because he's a rookie, I think, more than anything. It leaves a lot of question marks there when you're trying to get the offense rolling quickly and at an essential position for your quarterbacks.
You mentioned that uptick in production the last 6 games of the regular season. Matt talked about it again on Tuesday in terms of the rhythm that they got into. We saw the statistical production go up in those last 6 games of the regular season. We contextualized it. We know they were playing garbage opponents and garbage defenses and stretches of that, but there was no question that the offense looked better in that stretch because they had stability on the offensive line. Now with that, as you mentioned, there is instability at the offensive line. And so I asked Matt on Tuesday, are you feeling anxiety about this, knowing how much stability on the offensive line means to getting this thing rolling? And he said, it's not anxiety, but acknowledge that there is urgency, and particularly at left tackle with Teven Jenkins. Dionne, I think if you listened to Matt's comments about Teven on Tuesday, there was a different sort of nudge to them, right? It was kind of, hey, man, we need you. We need you soon. If you're going to be a difference maker for the 2021 Bears, you need to be on the practice field soon. And so you hear Matt say, Teven does no good to us if he's not on the field. You hear Matt say, wouldn't it be amazing if Larry Borum, a 5th-round pick, suddenly jumped in and stole the starting job? You heard Matt answer Brad Biggs' question and say, yeah, we're going to keep our eyes on the open market in case Ryan and his guys find some guys that can be an option to start for us at left tackle. All of this is sort of that little push to Teven saying, look, man, you got to start practicing because even though your back is tight, we've got to see what you look like at left tackle.
Yes.
We also have to see how the back responds to practice. And for a guy who's missed 6 practices, now you've got to see, can he practice 4 days in a row and not have back problems persist? It's all a mess right now on the offensive line. Ifedi, as you mentioned, strains or the hip flexor in his conditioning test coming in training camp. We don't know when he's going to be on the practice field. And now Elijah Wilkinson, we don't know where he is. And so you got Lachavious Simmons, you got Larry Borum, you got all these different guys mixing in. Oh, by the way, James Daniels left Tuesday's practice. One of your starting guards left Tuesday's practice with an injury of his own. So here we are. And all of a sudden you go, boy, all of the positive energy that seemed to be building up through the first week of camp is suddenly, whoa.
Yeah, total buzzkill. And the concern with Jenkins as well is there is no easing in for him now. Dan, they're in pads. So he has to dive right in. And they can't claim load management for a rookie. You can't do that. He needs to be able to go. And I'm glad that Nagy said that because he needs a nudge there. There's something going on. He's like, as soon as he's cleared, well, I mean, he's just standing around. Your back is tight. He's got to figure out what he can do on the field. They have to see him, and it's got to be sooner rather than later. We're into August. The first preseason game is coming. They have to know what they have at that position. And I'm sorry, Larry Borum was not drafted to be competing for the starting role. He was drafted to be depth at that position. And now here they sit in this desperate need 1 week into training camp. It's disturbing.
Yeah, and Larry Borum's a right tackle by trade, right? And so he doesn't know how to develop that comfort on the left side right away. And so that's a major steep climb to ask a guy like that to maybe be your starter heading up to play the Rams, by the way, in week 1. Teven Jenkins is going to, who knows? What do? You have the Dolphins coming into town next week for crossover practices. The intensity of that is going to be up by the very nature of crossover practices. And so now all of a sudden you're in this pickle there. I don't know how Matt gets his arms around this and puts together a plan that makes this whole thing work. On top of it, now they're back in COVID reshuffling mode. And that's going to be a major topic as we return to Hallis Hall on Thursday to figure out where are all these guys? Is anybody else, in jeopardy of missing time? By the way, quarterbacks coach John DeFilippo finally back at practice this week after missing the first few sessions with his own bout with COVID-19, fully vaccinated, but still dealt with the virus for a week stretch. Oh, by the way, that's your quarterbacks coach who's working with Andy Dalton and Justin Fields and to some extent Nick Foles. More on that in a different video later on. But as you can see, there's a lot here. There's a lot of headaches, and they better have the ibuprofen right next to the cafeteria counter where you pick up your napkin and your silverware.
Seriously, take 4 and get on the field. What are we waiting for here? What is your level of concern, though, about Robert Quinn? Because he sat out of Family Fest with back tightness as well. And this is a guy who needs to deliver more than 2 sacks. This is a guy who they have, I think, been speaking into reality that he's had this awesome start to camp. And now already he's the first day in pads and he's not able to be out there. That, to me, is a disconcerting tone this early in.
Level of concern elevated. Thank you for bringing up his name. That's a absolutely unforgivable omission from the list that I read earlier. Robert Quinn, that's one of your starting edge rushers who's been dealing with injury issues since he got here, and this is not good, right? It's something that bothered him in the spring. It's still around now. 2 sacks last year, not good enough. You can say all you want. Oh, he looks good. He looks good. He looks good. Until Robert Quinn can get out there and produce without any setbacks health-wise, we've got issues there. And so my level of concern with Robert Quinn is as high as it is anywhere. Now, listen, at least he's playing on a unit on defense that has answers, right? And can reshuffle some pieces and still make up for it, unlike the offense where you need that optimism and that stability. But boy, yeah, Quinn is another guy to add that list where you say, my God, this has got to be causing some sleeplessness for everyone involved on the Bears coaching staff.
Can they sign his gold medal winning sister? Can they? She's got speed that they could use on offense. Oh my gosh, she's so great. And the highlight of my week was how proud he was of her.
Yeah.
That really was the coolest conversation to just, he was, you could feel it, like exuding the pride and how she had worked so hard for that. And that was such a cool moment. Now I want him to have those same cool moments with the Bears. He needs to, they need him to, they are paying him handsomely to do so. So they need to get more production out of him. And I can't wait. I want to hear what Nagy says about where he's at when they get back to practice on Thursday. So a lot of, Dan, they still a lot of questions. We're 1 week in.
I know. We've been hammering the value of being back in person. That Robert Quinn interview the other day was one of the great ones of being in person. Because as you mentioned, you could feel it in the room, just that pride and that very sincere, heartfelt satisfaction that he had. And he said, that's my baby sister winning gold in Tokyo. And it was a really cool moment. And then offset the very next day by him being out of practice with a back issue. And so it's, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 1 step to the side. Sister wins gold medal. Your back hurts. Everybody's back hurts. My back hurts. Your back hurts.
Everybody's back hurts. I have back tightness too every day. I don't need load management. I go.
We need to get a day off, and then we need to regroup, and we need to get back out there. We got a lot of things coming up. It's time to stay healthy and get back out there, right?
That's exactly right. So, guys, stay tuned. We've got more coming for you because it's such a slow boil to get to the regular season, and we are just starting to cook.